Rain crashed against the rooftop while distant thunder rolled through the dark sky. Inside a small, quiet house at the end of the street, Daniel sat awake long after midnight. The clock beside his bed blinked 2:17 a.m., but sleep refused to come. The room was dim except for a single lamp glowing near the window. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands tightly clasped together. His Bible rested beside him, worn from years of reading and tears. He stared at the floor in silence, fighting the heaviness inside his chest. For years he had prayed for his family. He prayed when nobody else believed things could change. He prayed when arguments filled the house. He prayed when his father became sick. He prayed when money disappeared faster than hope. He prayed when his younger brother walked away from God. He prayed for peace. He prayed for healing. He prayed for restoration. But tonight something inside him felt broken. He whispered quietly into the darkness, "God, are you still listening?" The rain continued falling. No answer came immediately. Daniel lowered his head. "I've prayed for so long," he whispered again. "Maybe my prayers expired." The moment those words left his mouth, tears filled his eyes, because deep down that was the fear he had carried for months, that heaven had gone silent, that his prayers had somehow become too old, too weak, too late. Daniel stood slowly and walked toward the rain-covered window. Streetlights reflected softly across the wet road outside. Everything looked cold and empty. He remembered being younger, filled with faith that moved like fire inside him. Back then, he believed every prayer would quickly become a miracle, but life had taught him patience in painful ways. Sometimes years passed before anything changed. Sometimes nothing seemed to change at all. And tonight he wondered if all those prayers for his family had simply disappeared into silence. But then, a gentle peace slowly entered the room. Daniel could not explain it. The atmosphere changed. The heaviness began lifting little by little, and deep within his spirit he felt these words, "Your prayers for your family never expired." Daniel froze. His breathing slowed. Tears rolled down his face as warmth filled his heart. The voice was not audible like human speech, yet it was clearer than anything he had heard in a long time. Again the words came, "I have heard every prayer you prayed." Daniel covered his mouth as emotion overwhelmed him. Suddenly memories began flooding his mind. He saw himself at 15 years old praying beside his mother after another painful argument shook their home. He saw nights when he secretly cried for his father's health. He remembered praying for his younger brother after hearing him say he no longer believed in God. Prayer after prayer, year after year, moment after moment. And now God was reminding him that none of it had been forgotten. The room became completely still. Then God spoke to his heart again. "You think silence means I stopped working, but I have been moving in ways you cannot yet see." Daniel closed his eyes tightly. Those words pierced through every fear he carried. Because somewhere along the journey, he had started measuring God's faithfulness by visible results. If things improved, he believed God was near. If nothing changed, he feared heaven had forgotten him. But now he understood something important. God works beyond human timing. Seeds planted underground look invisible before they grow, and prayers often work the same way. Hidden, silent, unseen, yet alive. Daniel slowly sat back down on the bed. His thoughts drifted toward his grandmother. Before she passed away years earlier, she used to pray constantly for the family. Every morning she prayed. Every night she prayed. Daniel remembered hearing her voice through the hallway as a child. "Lord, cover this family with your mercy for generations." At the time, he barely understood the power of those prayers. But now, sitting alone in the quiet night, he realized something incredible. Those prayers never disappeared. Even after her death, they were still echoing through heaven, still moving, still alive before God. Daniel felt chills run through his body, because suddenly he understood, real prayers never expire. Time cannot destroy words spoken in faith. God remembers every tear-filled prayer whispered in love, every cry for healing, every desperate request for protection, every prayer spoken over children, parents, brothers, and sisters. Nothing is wasted in heaven. God gently whispered again, "The prayers you prayed in pain are still reaching places your eyes cannot see." Daniel bowed his head. For the first time in months, hope slowly returned, not because circumstances had suddenly changed. His father was still sick. Bills still covered the kitchen table. His brother still felt distant. But now Daniel realized God had never abandoned the situation. He had simply been working quietly, and sometimes God's greatest work happens in silence. The rain outside began slowing down. Daniel opened his Bible without thinking, and his eyes landed on these words: "Do not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time you will reap a harvest if you do not give up." He stared at the verse for a long time. Then tears fell onto the page, because he knew God was speaking directly to him. Do not give up. Do not stop praying. Do not believe heaven forgot your family. Daniel whispered softly, "Lord, I'm tired." Immediately peace answered him again. "I know. Lord, I don't know how much longer I can keep believing." Again God answered his spirit. "I am carrying what you cannot carry anymore." Daniel wept openly now. Years of pressure poured out of him. Years of trying to stay strong for everyone else. Years of silently worrying about his family's future. But now he finally understood something powerful. God never asked him to carry the burden alone. Prayer was never about controlling outcomes. Prayer was about placing loved ones into God's hands, and God's hands never fail. Suddenly, Daniel remembered a moment from childhood. His mother once told him, "When you pray for someone, God begins working on them even when you cannot see it." Back then, he thought change would happen instantly. Now he understood differently. Sometimes God works slowly because hearts heal slowly. Some wounds are deep. Some people need time before they are ready to surrender. Some miracles grow quietly before they appear publicly. And sometimes the very delays we hate are preparing people for the answers they need most. Daniel looked toward the hallway leading to his father's room. His father had become weak over the past year. The sickness drained his energy daily. Doctors gave uncertain answers. Fear lived constantly inside the house. Yet even in those painful moments, Daniel kept praying, sometimes with confidence, sometimes through tears, sometimes with barely enough strength to speak. And now God was reminding him, every prayer mattered, even the exhausted prayers, even the broken prayers, even the prayers spoken through disappointment. God treasures sincere prayers more than perfect words. The clock now read 3:11 a.m. The storm outside had almost ended. A strange calm filled the room. Then God spoke again to Daniel's spirit. "I am not only working on your family, I am working on you." Daniel sat silently. At first he did not fully understand, but slowly realization came. The years of praying had changed him too. Prayer had made him more compassionate, more patient, more dependent on God, more understanding toward pain. He realized that while he waited for God to transform his family, God had also been transforming his heart. The waiting season had not been meaningless. It had shaped him, strengthened him, deepened him spiritually. And suddenly Daniel saw something clearly. Sometimes the miracle begins inside the person who keeps praying. Because prayer changes environments, but it also changes hearts. Daniel smiled weakly through tears. For the first time in a long while, he no longer felt abandoned. He felt seen, known, heard. God continued speaking softly. "Do not judge the future of your family by their current condition." Those words carried deep power, because Daniel had started believing things would never improve. But God sees beyond the present moment. Where humans see brokenness, God sees possibility. Where humans see failure, God sees restoration. Where humans see distance, God sees future healing. And God was asking Daniel to trust him beyond visible evidence. That kind of faith is difficult. It requires surrender. It requires patience. It requires believing that God is moving even when emotions say otherwise. Daniel wiped his tears and looked upward. God, what if nothing changes? For a moment silence filled the room again. Then peace answered, trust me anyway. Those words settled deeply inside him. Faith is not believing only after miracles appear. Faith is trusting while the storm still exists. Daniel finally understood why heaven had seemed quiet. God had been teaching him deeper trust, not temporary trust based on emotions, but lasting trust rooted in God's character. The kind of trust that survives long waiting seasons. The kind of trust that keeps praying even when answers delay. The kind of trust that says, God, I still believe you are good. Outside, clouds slowly moved apart. Moonlight began shining softly through the window. Daniel suddenly felt led to walk into the kitchen. As he entered quietly, he noticed his mother sitting alone at the table. She looked tired. Her eyes were red from crying. Bills and medical papers were spread before her. She quickly wiped her face when she saw him. Sorry, she whispered. I didn't want anyone to see me like this. Daniel walked over slowly. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he gently held her hand, and for the first time in months he smiled. Mom, he said softly, God hasn't forgotten us. She looked at him with tired eyes. What makes you say that? Daniel took a deep breath. I don't know how to explain it, but tonight I realized our prayers are still alive before God. His mother's eyes filled with tears again, because deep down she needed to hear those words too. Families often suffer silently together, each person carrying fears they never fully speak aloud. But that night something shifted. Hope entered the kitchen again, not loud hope, not dramatic hope, but quiet, steady hope, the kind that survives storms. Daniel and his mother prayed together right there at the table, not perfect prayers, not polished religious words, just honest hearts speaking to God. And heaven listened, because God listens most carefully to sincere hearts. Days passed after that night. Circumstances did not instantly transform. His father still battled sickness. Financial struggles remained difficult. His brother still seemed distant, but Daniel changed. He no longer prayed with desperation alone. Now he prayed with expectation, because he finally understood God's timing is different from human timing, and delayed answers are not forgotten answers. One afternoon, weeks later, something unexpected happened. Daniel's younger brother came home earlier than usual. He looked exhausted emotionally. Without saying much, he sat quietly in the living room. After several minutes, he suddenly asked, Do you still pray for me? Daniel looked surprised. Every day. His brother lowered his eyes. Then quietly he admitted, I don't know why, but lately I keep feeling like God is trying to pull me back. Daniel's heart nearly stopped, because at that moment he realized something incredible. While he thought nothing was happening, God had been working secretly, quietly, patiently, powerfully. The prayers were reaching places Daniel could not see. Tears filled his eyes again, not because everything was fixed overnight, but because God was proving his faithfulness step by step. That night Daniel stood outside beneath the clear sky. The storm from weeks earlier was gone. Stars filled the darkness beautifully. And once more God whispered to his heart, Never believe your prayers expired. Daniel smiled through tears, because now he understood. Every prayer spoken in love matters. Every prayer over family carries power. Every cry for healing, protection, salvation, and restoration reaches heaven. Some answers arrive quickly. Others grow slowly across years. But none are forgotten. None are ignored. And none expire before God. So if you have been praying for your family, do not quit now. Do not let silence convince you heaven abandoned you. Do not believe delay means denial. God is still working behind closed doors, still touching hearts, still protecting people you cannot always reach, still arranging moments you cannot yet see. Sometimes the greatest miracles begin quietly, a softened heart, a hidden breakthrough, a slow healing process. A person secretly thinking about God again. You may not see it immediately, but heaven is moving. And one day you may discover that while you were crying and wondering if God heard you, He was already answering in ways beyond your understanding. So keep praying, keep believing, Keep trusting, because your prayers for your family never expired.